And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing very well. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a Monday morning. I want to preface the show by saying this. There is a game Monday night against the Islanders that we will have not seen. We recorded this prior to the game. So this happened to us quite a bit last year, where
Yes.
we would talk before a game, talk about all these issues, and that night those issues would, seemingly be fixed. And then people would be listening to a show that was on issues that were already fixed. So I would like to preface that by saying we're going to go over some issues after the first two games against the Devils. And somehow, by hook or crook, the Bruins are going to score like 8 5-on-5 goals against
Of
the Islanders
course.
on Monday
As
night,
expected.
as expected. But nevertheless, I'm pumped. I'm just happy to have hockey back. And by the way, for people who are watching on YouTube, I have a cut on my finger. And
Oh,
I'm
what
fighting
happened?
through it. I don't know. I was getting ready this morning, and all of a sudden there was this like blood on my phone, and I was like, "What?" And I looked at my thumb, and there was a cut. I don't know what happened to it, but I cut my finger, and I'm here. So great.
So fighting through it. Day-to-day decision.
Andre
Fighting through
Kasha
it.
with this would be out for like a month.
That's
I'm
probably true.
here playing. By the way, we'll get into that in a little bit. We'll start actually with the Bruins' lack of 5-on-5 scoring. So through 2 games, 6 periods, Ty Anderson tweeted out the exact minutes of the 2 games, which is always fun because it makes it seem way worse. They have 0 5-on-5 goals. And we both touted how deep this team was offensively to start. After 2 games, obviously you have Pasta injured. You have Craig Smith injured. You have Andre Kasha injured. Now, Craig Smith will be playing on Monday night, or he's at least expected to. What is wrong 5-on-5? What aren't they doing?
I just think they're mostly not keeping it simple and doing just the basic things that generates consistent 5-on-5 scoring. Because again, we could also look into, as much as people hop on the fancy stats and it's like expected goals don't mean shit. Well, they're not even doing that either. They're not even like generating these looks. Like you're not even seeing in these games. It'd be one thing if they were snake bit, but they're, Blackwood in those 2 games was making some crazy saves, or they had breakaways or chances right out in front. You really didn't see that. Like the pucks were either being fired in from deep and they were getting blocked or turned aside. There weren't guys down low to kind of bury any of those second chances. Like you're not even seeing those things, which are just the basic things that lead to grade A chances and goals. You're not seeing any of that right now. So I think for the Bruins, it's just about, keeping things simple. It's the stuff that we're going to talk about. It's going to be the stuff that anyone listen to, and it's going to be like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. That's how you get goal scoring. But it's what they need to do, right? Like you can go low to high as much as you want, but if you don't have guys down low to convert on those chances, you're not getting anything. And I think a lot of that has more to do with the fact that a lot of the guys who you're expecting to, add that added depth in scoring, like a DeBrusk or a Bjork, have been pretty much invisible this whole time. Like, we'll wait to see what happens with Craig Smith. I mean, I'm not going to judge him off of one game, and unfortunately, it seems like it's going to be something where he's going to be fighting through a little bit of a nagging injury right now, which is not ideal, right, for a guy who I think was viewed as a big 5-on-5 weapon for your team. But I think a lot of it lies on, guys like DeBrusk, of just, you got to get down low and at least have the goalie react to you down there. You can't just be invisible for most of those 2 games and expect this 5-on-5 offense to get rolling. So I think that's the most troubling thing, is that it's not just the fact that, they're getting these quality looks and, the numbers just aren't going their way. It's the fact that there's no numbers to speak of, right? There's no high danger chances you're seeing getting generated at all.
That's the thing. And I also think it's sort of that low to high thing. I remember last year, the Bruins spoke about after they played the Hurricanes, we need to go more high to low or low to high. And what always kind of got me was like, you don't have the caliber defenseman the Hurricanes do. Like, you have Dougie Hamilton and Slavin and, you have all those guys down there. Jeremy Lauzon, how many shots has he gotten blocked in the first 2 games? Like, you're expecting the wrong guys to get these shots through. Like, for a guy like Jeremy Lauzon, who's playing top 4 minutes, and for the first time in his career, playing with McAvoy on the top pairing or whatever, you're already putting a lot on his plate. Getting the shots through, should be simple. But for a guy like him, it doesn't seem to be. Now, again, he might score 3 goals tonight. Who knows? But I do think it's the lack of high danger chances. And as you mentioned, DeBrusk is invisible. Anders Bjork was invisible. Craig Smith really didn't do much in the 1 game he was there. your best 5-on-5 or, your best producer of offense thus far on 5-on-5 is Nick Ritchie.
Yeah.
He had the goal technically. It got tipped in. Didn't count.
And where was he on the power play goal, which is like a mop up goal pretty much. But where was he there, and where was he on that goal that got turned back? Like, dude was like in front screening and tipped a pass. Like
That's why, like, I get the Nick Ritchie hate. I'm with you there. I think he's slow. Don't give him the puck in transition. You see it time and time again. They give it to him at the red line, and it's like just nothing. But he does his job in the offensive zone. He's been getting to the front of the net. He's looking for tips. He's giving you that. So you can't hate that. The problem is with DeBrusk. The problem is with Bjork. But again, why are the Bruins 1-0-1? Because of the veteran leadership. Bergeron, Marchand, Rask. There are your three right there. That is why the Bruins are 1-0-1. So, I'm curious. Another young guy that had a tough start and will be back in the lineup Monday against the Islanders. But obviously was in game one, out game two. I had very high expectations for him, so I'm hoping. Two of my biggest predictions were DeBrusk going to lead the Bruins in goals and Stadnyka's going to play his way into a lineup spot. Both of those things look very not promising. I hope you didn't bet on those. I even added Stadnyka to my fantasy team. I dropped him. I pulled the plug, but I had to do it because I wanted to get someone else in there who was going to guarantee me points. But at any rate, Stadnyka comes out in game one, pretty irrelevant alongside Marchand and Bergeron, not there in game two. Bruce Cassidy is a lot of things, and he does a lot of good things. But one thing he's never really good at is letting guys get comfortable. It's like you have to score or do something big in your first couple shifts or you're off. And I get it. He's trying to mix and match, find the right things. But kicking Stadnyka out after a game, I don't think that's the best move.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones where he's going to have to balance. I think that, his willingness to switch up the lines is kind of going to be magnified this year, especially just on the fact that they need to start, collecting points in a hurry. They can't have, if Stadnyka is struggling in that role for 4 or 5 games, they have to pull the plug, do it after one game. That seems rather drastic. And, I think that's also more or less a byproduct of his thinking going into that second game against Jersey. He's like, all right, Stadnyka needs to still have kind of that reality check of we're starting you on that top line, but you're not guaranteed the spot. But also I think Bjork played well in that first game, so he was going to warrant another look. And I don't know how it would have helped a guy like Frederick to get pulled out of the lineup when he's been probably their most promising forward, I would say, through the first 2 games.
Biggest bright spot.
Yeah, so you weren't going to take him out. You weren't going to, I think, take Bjork out after how we looked in game one, which I thought was pretty good. So it makes sense that, if you had a chance to pull out Stadnyka for a game and give him kind of that reality check of like, all right, you're not guaranteed that spot. I could see it. It's just hopefully it's not like a situation where, we talk about this a little bit later on where they play the Islanders Monday night and there's 2-3 shifts where they have nothing going in the ozone, and then it's Smith up in the top line, right? Like we have to at least see some traction being gained especially in in-game settings. Like if you want to go game to game and we reevaluate, I could see that. But if it's 2-3 shifts with Bergeron and Marchand and Stadnyka's then just buried, then all right, you have to see what you got, because as much as he's a rookie, as much as he's going to have those challenges, Stadnyka still gives you more of a offensive ceiling than a lot of these other guys. I mean, we saw up in the Toronto bubble, as much as maybe he didn't lead to quality, as much as he didn't lead to points on the board, he led to a whole lot of good 5-on-5 chances, right? Like that's kind of what he did up in Toronto. So hopefully they kind of keep with him in these in-game settings when he's cleared to play, because I think at the very least he's going to bring you at least some quality looks, which if you're playing with Bergeron and Marchand usually means you're going to end up with at least a couple of grade A chances.
You do wonder if Stadnyka's better with Krejci. And I think that was something we saw in the bubble a lot, was he was very good with Coyle and he was really good with Krejci and DeBrusk. And I think that's something that you're going to see Monday night against the Islanders. You already saw it. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't work. We're kind of going in the future here. Sucks that a game's on a Monday night. That's why I love recording on Mondays, because there's never games Monday nights. But at any rate, I do think that, for a guy like Stadnyka, you do need that consistency. He needs time. Again, no preseason. And I get no one had preseason, but for a guy like Stadnyka needs preseason. Give him some time. And I think my prediction might come true. The other one, obviously, we mentioned a little bit, is DeBrusk. Now, DeBrusk is slated to be on the top line on Monday night. I don't think that's permanent. It
No,
definitely isn't permanent.
playing
Because
on the off wing either. I don't think
yeah,
he's usually too conducive to that, but
I think they are trying to do anything they possibly can to get this guy to produce, and that's an issue. That's a big issue. I don't know. DeBrusk was super inconsistent last year. Again, it's 2 games. They had no preseason. Their guys around the league are going to take time to ingratiate into things. But I found myself not noticing DeBrusk
no.
in games. And that to me is the biggest issue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, even in games where he was off last year, you'd at least see a few games where at least he was active on the forecheck, or at least, again, where does DeBrusk get all of his goals from? It's usually in tights, tipping shots. It's doing the stuff that a guy who's a 20-plus goal scorer consistently does year after year, and you're not even really seeing that so far. So for the Bruins, I mean, they've talked multiple times this offseason, this camp, about how, all right, DeBrusk, it's year 4. We need you to be more of a consistent guy out there. And, you just can't have a situation like these 2 games, especially where you don't have Pasta. We don't know what's going on with Kasha right now, which you have to be concerned about with him based on the amount of concussions he's had. And that's what sure seemed like it was in that game on Saturday. So you need another guy outside of that top line to produce 5-on-5. And DeBrusk is usually the most fitting candidate for it. But again, you can't have games like that where, I mean, he's pretty much invisible. Like when you're overshadowed by guys like Frederick or Richie or stuff like that. It's good for the Bruins in terms of their depth, but when a guy you were expecting to score, not 20 goals in a shortened season like that, but over the course of an 82-game season, 20-plus goals, you can't have kind of no-shows like that.
That's exactly it. And that's the issue. And so before I promise we'll get into good stuff. We'll get into positives from the first couple games, I promise. But I have to ask, based off what you've seen, are they a playoff team? Because again, now I projected them second. You did the same. I think on paper they're the second best team in the East. But the Caps look pretty good through 3 games. The Flyers obviously look good. The Bruins, same 5-on-5 issues. You have injuries down the right side. The goaltending can't steal you. The shorthanded. You're not going to get power play goals every game. You're not going to get shorthanded goals every game. Rask and Halak are not going to be amazing every game. Are they from what you've seen, are they a playoff team?
Yeah, I still think they're a playoff team. I mean, I think even with some of these struggles, I think you're still seeing, they still just put things out on defense. But I think you look at Lauzon, who was so-so in game 1, but looked, I think, much better on Saturday. You look at Zboril, who I think's been pretty good for what his role's been.
Yes.
Which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. Frederick looked good. The 4th line looks great, which is a step in the right direction from last year. Power play, they went 0-4 on Saturday, but it got 2 on Thursday. PK looks good. Again, I think once you get Pasta back, that helps out quite a bit. Again, it's not like, you can't put a whole Band-Aid on your scoring just with Pasta coming back, but you still hope it's just 2 games. We'll take the David Krejci route, which is what he said yesterday. He was like, I'm not worried about it. It's 2 games. So, again, you have to get more consistent 5-on-5 scoring because if you have the same top-heavy scoring output at 5-on-5, then you're not going to go far in the playoffs. Because as much as I think people want to talk about, what do people talk about when it comes to how they've come up short in the playoffs the last couple of years? It's going to be goalie situation for some reason, because people still point out Rask in Game 7 against the Blues. They talk about Rask leaving last year. They talk about, they're too small and get bullied around. Look at the last 2 times they've been bounced out of the playoffs. They got knocked around at 5-on-5 against St. Louis. I think they were outscored 14-4 at 5-on-5 in St. Louis.
Yes, and the top line did not produce.
Did not produce at all. Your highest scoring 5-on-5 forwards in 7 games against the Blues was Sean Crowley and Joakim Nordstrom with 5 and 3 points apiece.
Oh, that's right.
So, and as soon as Ryan O'Reilly's line tilted the ice in their favor against the Bergeron line, you were screwed. So people forget that. That's how they lost that one. And then last year, I think they were outscored again. I think they only had 4 5-on-5 goals against Tampa. Like, you're not going to beat Tampa if you're not evening the ice in a majority of your time out there, right? It's 5-on-5 play. It's even strength play. It's not a specialized part of the game where you're able to tilt the ice significantly in your favor elsewhere. So it's been a flaw for this team for years now, and it's usually what has ended up dooming them in the playoffs. They have to get better, but I'm not going to overreact after 2 games. Who knows if they lose to the Islanders like 5-1 later today, then we might have some issues. But I still think they've got enough talent on this team. We got enough guys who should be better. That I still think they're at the very least a playoff team, and I still think they're going to be 2-3 seed when you look at how they are in the East.
I think they're a playoff team. I just have my doubts about if they finish second. I think that there's a good chance they finish third or fourth. I think there's a good chance they're fighting for a playoff spot or fighting to stay in one late. I mean, again, we haven't experienced that here since 16-17, I think, where they're like fighting to keep a spot. I mean, the past couple of years, they just kind of coast in the last month just because they have a spot. Last year, they were President's Trophy winners. So I wouldn't be surprised because, again, if you can't get the 5-on-5 scoring, if the lines behind Bergeron are not producing, if your only output is power play and Marchand and Bergeron on a penalty kill, again, it's only 2 games, but you can't win that way. You cannot win in the playoffs that way. You can't win long-term that way. And again, I think at some point when Andre Kase comes back, he might score a goal. Maybe.
Hopefully.
Maybe. One of these days. But I do think that that there's some things that need to. But again, also there's no preseason games. There's a short training camp. I guarantee you'll see them playing better hockey in a week or two.
And I also think, too, you look at a guy like even Zboril, who looks, I think, good, but also I think someone mentioned on Twitter, like, he's also been playing in Europe. Like, I think you're seeing a lot of these guys who've been overseas, who've been playing, who look just noticeably sharper in terms of how they play. So I think that factors into it. I give it – it's tough to, like, view everything from the lens of, like, a 4 or 5 game sample to get a full measure of a team, or at least see when to start really evaluating them when it's
a 2 game sample.
Yeah. But, it's tough doing that when it's a 56-game schedule and, like, every point matters. But I think you need to give them at least, a week or 2 to see how they kind of get into a rhythm here. Because, Cassidy said today that the whole league seems pretty wide open in terms of defense has been kind of defense optional, and goalies haven't really been shopped to open up the air. So it hasn't been the case for the Bruins, obviously. But I think you're going to need to see a few of these teams have some more time to get into the swing of things.
I saw someone tweet, they were like, every game, and it's like, bad goaltending, lots of offense, no defense,
and then
tons
the
of goals. And then the Bruins and the Devils, like, oh, we're gonna play really tight, hockey, and no one's gonna get any goals. And that was sort of the case.
It's like playing against like a Guy Boucher team. It's just like the most uneventful hockey ever.
Have fun with the Islanders. I hope you guys had fun with the Islanders on Monday.
Yeah, exactly.
But at any rate, they need to play a high flying. You need to get the Bruins with the Rangers right now. That's what they need. They need to play the Rangers. But let's get into some good. So you mentioned Zboril. I think Jacob Zboril was a very nice bright spot in the first 2 games. Looked good. Again, and Cassidy said this before the season. Jacob Zboril does not need to come in here and play like the 13th overall pick and change the defense.
Yeah.
All he needs to do is just be somewhat sound defensively, figure out what you can and can't do, and just get the puck in the hands of everybody else. And that's what he did. And he was good at it. He was fine. On his right side, Kevin Miller. Again, Kevin Miller looked really good through 2 games. And again, I think a lot of these guys who we had such low expectations for looked good because I think maybe our expectations were extremely low. But I also think they look good. Yeah. I genuinely think Zboril looked pretty good. I think Kevin Miller looked really good. Mm-hmm. He had the big hits. He had the fight. We did a video on why the fight really didn't matter, so you can go watch that if you'd like. But I think it's pretty obvious it didn't matter. Trent Frederick was really good in the first 2 games. He's like a more controlled Sean Corrali in the sense that he's just chaos. He's complete chaos, but he's much more controlled chaos. And I have a question for you. Do you think Frederick's ever going to be get off the 4th or 3rd line? Do you think there's ever a chance he's like on the top 2 lines ever?
I don't think so. I'd love to be pleasantly surprised. You could look at a guy like Brad Marchand. Is he going to be Brad Marchand? No. Like, I don't think. If he becomes
Trent
like
Frederick is the next Brad Marchand. You said it. Nope, you said it.
Yeah. Maybe he becomes like a Richie, where it could be like a top 6 guy of just being a guy who, knocks in those pucks from grade A ice. But no, I feel like he's more of a ceiling as a 3rd, 4th line guy. Now, can he be a very, very good bottom 6 guy? Like, yeah, he could be a guy who could get 25, 30 points regularly, kind of like a Sean Corrali, who I think is a 4th line plus guy, right? I think Sean Corrali is a very good guy in your 4th line in terms of what he brings you. So I think if you have I think if you have Frederick in that role, it helps out your fourth line quite a bit, and I think you've seen that so far. I mean, it seems like everyone knows what Trent Frederick does well, right? He can beat the bag out of guys. He can, he's physical. He's more than happy to mix things up after the whistle. But is he going to score? Is he going to do anything outside of beating the shit out of guys? Which is, I think, the biggest concern, right? Because you can't field a fourth line, especially how the Bruins like their fourth line, where they can negate other teams. With a guy who just wants to beat the shit out of you the entire time. As much as I'm sure hockey guys from yesteryear love that. Yeah, exactly. It's not going to help you when the other team's, Ovechkin's rifling one time as past Rask while you're trying to scrap with Tom Wilson. So, but no, I think he's looked good. He looks like he's, rounded out his game overall. I think he's skating better. He's definitely, added some weight. He had that, that rush where he fought off the guy, still managed to get that pass through the slot that didn't connect, but it still was a good chance for that fourth line. Shot looks a lot better. Almost scored late in that game, which would have.
Yeah, he did.
So, I mean, no, he looks good. I mean, are you going to expect him to get bumped up higher in the lineup? I wouldn't say so for this year, but if he can be an advanced, reliable fourth line guy, like even like a Chari with maybe a little bit more offensive pop, then I think you'd be happy with what he'd bring you this year, because you just need to get that fourth line rolling, and so far they haven't been a liability. Again, let's see what happens when they play against more, daunting top six opponents. Like Cal Palmieri's good. Jack Hughes should be a lot better this year, but they're not, you're not playing against Panarin and Zibanejad or Ovechkin's line or, Crosby, Malkin or any. Yeah, so we'll see what happens there, but so far their turns have been pretty good.
Yeah, no, it was good. I thought they were great. The fourth line was the best line in both games, 5-on-5. But Frederick, it's funny. He really does. He does like just mix it up. I mean, Frederick is someone who Bruins fans are going to love. His presser on Sunday where, he's like, I can't wait to mix it up with all 7 other teams. And, he did. It's always a good sign when someone's honest. And it felt like when he was asked about the beef with Subban, like he answered honestly. He enjoyed it. He kind of likes poking the flames. He likes standing up for teammates. So I think that is going to be something that it's really interesting and really fun to watch throughout the year. I was saying in the video post game on Saturday that the Bruins really don't have any agitators. They have people who stand up to agitators, but they don't have anyone who really pokes the bear, so to speak, of other teams. But he could be that guy. I just don't, he's on the fourth line, so I figure they're going to do it anyways, but maybe he does it more. I can't wait to see him in a playoff series when he's against another team, potentially 7 straight times, and he's getting under the skin of whoever the Bruins play. Would have been great in those Maple Leaf series with Nazem Kadri, and that would have been very, very exciting to watch. But Frederick has looked great. Another person who's looked great, the goalies. Tuukka Rask, Yaroslav Halak. People are probably in their car listening. Like, it took them all this time to mention how good they were, but it's kind of, we expected it. No one was like surprised by any of this. Rask, I think, is the more encouraging one considering, he's the starter. And it's funny when I was watching the games this weekend and I saw Matt Kalman write this, the Bruins now have to sign Rask. And I agree. I think they have to re-sign Rask. I think the number one reason you do is Swayman and Vladar aren't ready.
Yeah.
But they're not. And so, Rask has to come back. Rask actually has to come back because, you can – I was thinking about this the other day. A lot of people say, well, Jordan Binnington took a team to the cup and Anton Khudobin took a team to the cup and, all these fringe starters, young guys out of nowhere taking teams to cups. That's all well and good. But the probability of that you're going to hit on the guy who gets hot is so small. Why not stick with the probability of the guy who is elite and has a good track record of going to the cup final?
Yeah, and I think that's also the thing is consistency. Like, I mean, of course, Jordan didn't help them win a cup, but also what happened the next year where he shit his pants against Vancouver, and how's it looking so far? Where they're getting absolutely lit up.
And Krug on all those defensive draws.
We can talk about that another time, I guess, once we have a longer sample size. But like Craig Berube's putting Krug in, only 20% ozone faceoffs. It's just negligence on knowing what the player's good at. Like that's Like, what are you doing, you idiot? Like, why are you putting him in a role like that where, listen, we all love Torrey Krug's game, but we also, I think the Bruins are well aware of how you can best make do with his abilities and account for some of the flaws in his game. If Greg Berube just having him on the PK or having him doing D zone draws, like, you get what's coming to you if you think that was the expectation going into it. So anyway, after my rant with the Blues and Jordan Binnington, who sucks, I think it makes so much sense for the Bruins, and it's just you map out just their plan in net, and it's just Swayman and Vladar just aren't ready yet. And as much as both those guys should hopefully be in a spot where they can get some reps down in Providence, let's be frank, like it's a 20-plus game AHL season. They're not going to get the workload that they both need, especially Alex Swayman, to all of a sudden be ready for training camp next year to make a push for the NHL roster, right? That'd be pretty cool, but it's not going to happen. Like, Jeremy Swayman's a fantastic goalie prospect, but 20 games in the AHL, which probably is going to end up being 10, 15 for him, all things considered. It's not going to be enough to make that adjustment up to the pro ranks because we've seen plenty of goalies come from college who look fantastic, and then they just kind of can't adjust to it. Not saying Swayman's in that boat, but you need to see what these guys do in the pro level before just dropping them in the NHL.
Exactly. Zane McIntyre, the number one name I thought of there. But yeah, I think Rask has been great. I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. And that's one thing that I think Bruins fans have become so comfortable with. For the last, since 2006, you haven't had to worry about the goalie?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's ridiculous. That's absurd. And for all you Bruins fans, from 2006 or 2005 even, I think, to now, you've never had to go, oh, I don't trust the starting goalie. Now, some of you have said that about Rask, but you don't worry about him in the regular season. And I don't know why you worry about him in the postseason, but that's a whole other thing for a whole other day. But you haven't had to worry. You're not these teams who can't find someone consistent in net. I mean, you don't have two sucks. You have two goods, greats, whatever you want to say. But I think it's, I think people, the anti-Rask people, I don't think have realized yet that Rask is up at the end of this year, or maybe they haven't said anything on Twitter yet. But
mm-hmm.
When that bad game comes, because it always does. And for every goalie, they can't re-sign him. They got to find someone else. And
mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't taken a look at the goalie free agents for this offseason yet. That's probably a video we'll do later on as the season.
Jordan Binnington, baby.
Is Jordan Binnington a free agent?
Is he an RFA?
He's probably an RFA, I would think, because of his age.
Yeah.
I think he's an RFA.
Give me 1 second.
Send it. You know what? The Bruins will send him an offer sheet. That'd really.
Oh no, he'd be a UFA. He's an expiry status UFA.
Okay, that's right. They did sign it. They signed him to a deal after he won the cup, and they kind of overpaid for him, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't think the goaltending crop is anything crazy for the free agents. Maybe it is, and I just haven't seen it yet, and people are yelling at their cars right now. But I don't think nothing's beating Rask. Nothing is better than Rask. And I don't expect Rask to ask for more than what he's getting now, just because he knows he wants to stay here, which, again, is not a great thing for everybody because everyone who said that is not a Bruin anymore. But
yes.
That's the one bad thing.
Yeah.
But at any rate, we covered everything we had to cover. Actually, let's hit one more thing before we finish here. I was going to do a separate video on this for the YouTube channel, but we might as well hit on it here because I think Bruins fans are kind of curious about this. Keith Yandle. Keith Yandle obviously is going through some tough times with Florida management. The Ironman streak was almost broken, and then they were like, nah, you're going to play. He scores a goal.
Of course.
Great. But obviously, everyone connects Keith Yandle right back to Boston, and rightfully so. He's from Milton.
Yep.
So obviously he's a local guy. Should the Bruins go for him? I think we both have the same answer on this. Or, well, kind of, but should they go for him?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I love Keith Yandle's game. I think he's a great off-ice guy. He'd be hilarious to just have, I think people laud kind of how he is in the room. But I think you just kind of break down the hurdles with making a deal like that. and it just seemed like there's too much for them to overcome. I mean, you got that contract, which is $6.35 million a year.
6.35.
Yeah, it's a lot to take on. Even if you switch some cash, like, do you want a guy who's 34, who has 2 more years after this year, at that hit on your roster when you're either probably going to be looking to retool on the fly in a couple of years, or you're looking to rebuild? You want that contract kind of on your books when you have to sign McAvoy and Carlo and Pasternak, and in 2022 a guy like Barkov becomes a free agent. Like, do you throw a shit ton of money at him to keep this kind of team's window open? Like, there's a lot of different things they can do. Yes, you do, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But
I did it in my franchise mode. It worked out great. My
yes,
team's almost in the cup final. So
but if you're doing any things like that, you can't be in a spot where you're have a contract like Yandle's. And I think for as much as Yandle's still a very, very good power play guy, you look at his numbers outside of it, and they're very, very ugly, unfortunately. Like 5-on-5, even strength defensively, he's not up to par for what the Bruins need. For a team like the Bruins, who, their identity is based on, a structured defense, Ian doesn't really help you out there. And considering, they're still going to see what a guy like Grzelcyk has or McAvoy, it's not like it's an area where, like, their power play is completely out of gas and they need to get it rolling. Like, if Yandle
that was one area they were great at this weekend.
Yeah, if Yandle was kind of like a guy like even like Uyghur, who we talked about a few months ago, where he's a steady defensive guy, but also very good at 5-on-5 offensive generation. You look at him and be like, oh shit, okay, we will look at him. But Yandle doesn't really fit what they need, and when you factor in the money and a couple other things, it just doesn't seem like it's a good fit.
That's the thing. It's like you need the 5-on-5 offensive production. He doesn't really move the needle there. He moves the needle on power play points.
Yeah.
And also the money. If he's taking up all that, if he's taking up a top 4 spot, potentially hurting the development of younger guys who might have higher ceilings 5-on-5. And again, the biggest thing is the money to me.
Also, yeah, I was going to say too, the fact that he's got a no movement clause, I believe that stays with him if he gets traded to Boston, which means if he then is on the team for the expansion draft, you need to protect him. If you have a no movement clause, you have to get protected. So if you get Yandle, you're losing Grzelcyk, Carlo, one of those guys. So it's another thing that factors into with that no movement clause. So you're going to lose another really good guy if you bring him in.
This does not seem like the move for many teams, but especially the Boston Bruins.
Yes.
But so I thought we'd kind of go into the Keith Yandle stuff there for a little bit, because I think there are a lot of people who want Keith Yandle, and I get it. The numbers are great. The points are great. The surface level stuff from from Mass, fun guy, would be great for interviews.
Mm-hmm.
But on the dive a little deeper, it's really probably not worth the Bruins' time. That is today's Bruins Beat. We covered absolutely everything. Fun to obviously have all these things to talk about, Connor. Is there anything that you're working on at BSJ that people can look forward to?
Yeah, we're just going to have the regular day-to-day stuff covering the Bruins. We have a few projects we're working on that we're hopefully will be rolling out in the next couple of weeks. So you can follow all that over at bostonsportsjournal.com. Subscribe there, and you can follow me on Twitter at ConnorRyan_93.
Do all that. And for CLNS Media, I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.